some major breaking news yesterday. The merger between Paramount and Skydance was officially approved by the Federal Communications Commission. That merger was at the center of the controversy surrounding both the recent cancellation of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert and the $16 million settlement between President Trump and Paramount over an interview CBS's 60 Minutes did with Kamala Harris late last year.
Now, both the cancellation and the settlement have been seen by some as a capitulation to the Trump administration to, quote, grease the wheels, so to speak, on the massive merger. Democrats were quick to double down on that criticism. Let's take a listen.
It's not a coincidence, it's a plan. And never before has the FCC approved a merger under these circumstances. Beyond the apparent corruption, this agreement is also a direct threat to CBS's journalism.
The appearance of this wink-wink deal basically lets every other company and every other billionaire know that Trump is open for business, apparently happy to accept offers in exchange for favors.
Meantime, many on the right are praising the deal for Skydance's promise to end DEI. Conservative commentator Robbie Starbuck said in a post on X, quote, "Once the Paramount sale is done, Skydance will end all DEI and appoint an official whose job will be focused on eliminating media bias." FCC Chair Brendan Carr has once again delivered.
Now, the news of the merger came mere hours after the popular show South Park signed a monster 5-year, $1.5 billion deal with Paramount and then aired its Bawdy Season 27 premiere, skewering both Trump and its newly signed parent company in the process. The episode included several unflattering depictions of Trump, including likening him to the show's past depiction of former Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein. The show also took shots at Paramount and CBS, mocking them for being afraid to criticize the president. Let's take a short look.
This is 60 Minutes. Oh, boy. Oh, God. The small town of South Park, Colorado is protesting against the president. The townspeople claim that the president, who is a great man.
A great man.
Great guy.
There's so much satire there.
It is. I love South Park, always have. I think it's funny. They skewer both sides. It's great. They're one of the few comedy shows that actually effectively, I think, criticizes both sides of the political aisle, and it's fun. I do think this South Park episode airing, they obviously recently had a deal with Paramount for, what was it, $1 billion to air those episodes, suggests that the Colbert cancellation was not, at least entirely, driven by the desire for Paramount to want to get this merger done. Otherwise, the idea that they would have let South Park air this would be ludicrous.
Well, I think the difference for me, I thought a lot about that because I watched this and I was like, oh, wow, they went all the way in. But I think with Colbert, it's a person that you see eye to eye. Like President Trump is like, okay, you're a successful businessman, so am I, outside of like being a president and being a talk show host. And you are, for President Trump, probably talking smack about me as a person that I can put the opinion next to the name, and you're boldly standing firm every night and doing that on television. And he feels strongly about Colbert. And he also has went on Truth Social and said, look, you know, basically, I'm happy that he got let go. If I had something to do with it, he's touting, like, attaching himself to it. And part of the problem is all the things that happen in that merger. Like, these are businessmen, right? Businessmen and women. They're coming to the table talking about getting rid of DEI, having some internal outside auditor go through all the systems to make sure that CBS News is reporting factual and you know, accurate information. There's all these agreements that went into an $8 billion merger. And I think that one of those agreements could have easily been a handshake conversation. Like, okay, get rid of the show, because I don't think that even Comedy Central has the same type of gets on Trump's nerves or gets to his ego in the same way that Colbert may have, and with Colbert's audience. Now, also, it's a money thing. If he really was losing $40 million, then that's just the name of the game, right? Yeah. The answer to most questions is money. And so I think that that has to be said. But also, you know, President Trump got mad about South Park. But like you said, if they're coming at both sides, then he can't be that mad. But if Colbert, people feel like he always is attacking President Trump, this could be part of the agreement. And then that lends the question of, like, how much do you have to cater to President Trump in order to make things happen? Like, we should have the FCC looking over deals because we don't want monopolies, because we want to protect, you know, fairness across the board. We shouldn't have the FCC stopping or looking over deals because President Trump doesn't personally like somebody, or President Trump feels like Kamala's interview took too much breath out. You know, there wasn't something so egregious there that it was worth $16 million. And finally, I think that CBS and Paramount plan to not cater to or plan to not say anything about Trump's accusations about editing that interview. But then they were surprised by Trump's win and they realized they had to play ball. But I think the initial plan was to keep moving forward. And now they're like, oh, well, we're not going to get to move forward in any way because Trump's blocking it based off a personal vendetta, which we know is his MO.
The $40 million lost per year on the Colbert Show was really the number that stuck out to me too. And the guy gets paid $20 million of that. So it's like, how can that possibly stay afloat? The fact that they're even giving him until next May to film a final season, I think is incredibly generous if it really is such a money loser. But one of the other things that I wanted to get into about this merger, the DEI thing, whatever, you throw a bone to the Trump administration in his base, that's great. But one of the connections that this has to a recent media deal in the UK, which is that Redbird, which is a capital investment company in the US, but they also have a separate Redbird branch in the UAE, is a minority investor in Skydance. And people have been raising red flags about Redbird's connections to the Chinese Communist Party. Its chairman, John Thornton, has received a bunch of awards from the CCP. He has talked openly about how the CCP needs to get into English language media in order to tell the Chinese story, basically exert influence on the rest of the world. And Redbird was recently involved in the purchase of the Telegraph, the sort of iconic, infamous newspaper in the UK, where the House of Lords actually voted to increase a cap from 5% to 15% on foreign ownership stakes in media so that the deal could go through. So that's one of the sort of underreported parts of the story that I find really interested. I don't know exactly what percentage stake Redbird has in Skydance, but I'm surprised that no one has brought this up.
But doesn't that raise a red flag for you about what now becomes this, even if it's a subtle messaging, whether it's Redbird's attachment and then what maybe the tone might change on stories that have to do with China?
Totally.
And, but then also there's a subtle messaging that we're going to get because part of the agreement that Paramount agreed to with Trump was 15 to 20 million roughly in ads or favorable language and programming and advertisements around President Trump. And so if you think about that, that is basically almost like an agreement of propaganda, like $20 million of just like saying it's not campaign season. Like, what are we going to see this as? Like, just embedded in news stories? Like, I'm concerned about the autonomy now that it feels like CBS News does not have, even though I know they're going to try to continue to operate, particularly 60 Minutes as a separate news entity. But when you think about now this Redbird story, which you just brought to my attention, and thank you for that, as well as what the agreements, under the table may have been with President Trump, as well as what we've got to read through all the listed agreements that were reported on by journalists, it makes me question about what we're going to see in the next few months or few years that will really create some kind of bias. And probably, even if it's subtle, like, will we know all about this? And is news kind of changing in a way based on ownership? I mean, we even see that with Washington Post and Jeff Bezos owning it. A lot of people left because they feel like it's changing directions. And so is that a good thing to have new leadership and try new things? Is it also a good thing to have billionaires running news organizations? Like, it's just such a larger conversation when news is attached to it.
Yeah, especially since a lot of local news outlets are now owned by these mega conglomerates that are owned by the billionaires too. So people wonder, well, what happened to local news? It doesn't seem as salient as it used to, and maybe it's overly nationalized. And I think that's because of the ownership structure where a lot of these places, sure, maybe they couldn't stand up financially on their own, but is the alternative really that much better? The ad question is interesting. I imagine it's probably going to be midterm ads. Trump, perhaps from his PACs, will support Republican candidates in 2026. But I would imagine, since they are a broadcast network, that they would have to provide equal airtime then to the other side.
Right, because that's part of the agreement. But then it also, ads can run across the board. So they own a ton of things under the Paramount umbrella. So what does that mean when the ads run on many of their other platforms that they own? And so, I know that there are FCC rules, but then the FCC is working on behalf of President Trump to kind of do what I view as some of his targeted favors based on retribution that he planned to get. And so if that is a part of the conversation, it just concerns me of what people will be consuming unknowingly.
Yeah, I think it'll be curious to see what happens over the next year or two, and we can kind of tell based on the content whether this had a significant impact on the news gathering side of their business.
Right. Up next, President Trump wants Elon's AI company to thrive. Is he trying to patch things up with Musk? We'll tell you more. Stay tuned.